What's good, meaningful movers? Welcome back to Moving With Me, the podcast where actions have meaning, words have meaning, and we open up the conversation to discover what's your next move. I'm your host, Krystal. And in today's episode, we're going to revisit an oldie but necessary topic. I find it equally comforting as it is surprising that this condition or state of mind is more common than I thought. But you know how we do it here. We need to go ahead and set that theme. So let's do that. The word of the day is optimization. I know we've talked about optimism before, but optimization is the actions, practices, and principles we take to make something more effective or functional as possible. Don't get me wrong, nobody's perfect, but that's what continuous improvement is all about. That's enough of me talking. How about we introduce our guest, and there's no one better to do that than herself, Heather. Why don't you give the people a bit of background about yourself and what you are going to share with us today?
Sure. Well, hello, Krystal. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here and to be able to share with our audience today. What a great word that's going to sort of frame our conversation today. So yeah, let me give a little bit of background and share sort of how I got into this work. So I am a holistic nutritionist and a yoga and meditation teacher. And I started working in this area because of my own experience with anxiety, panic attacks, and wanting to learn how to manage it in a natural way. And so I sort of went down this rabbit hole of learning how to do that. So let me back up a little bit and say that while for me, all of this sort of exploded when I was in school and university, but I was sort of set up to develop a lot of these issues. So growing up, I was very sensitive, any type of criticism, and I would be in tears. I was a perfectionist. I had to get top marks or I felt like a complete failure. And I was so terrified of disappointing people. And I was an overthinker. I would overthink, what if of like every possible scenario of things that could happen in the future. And I would replay, interactions with people and wonder like, oh, did I come across as weird or awkward there? And
Oh my
so
God!
am I hitting a point for you?
Yes.
Are you feeling like, yes?
I had to jump in there. I'm sorry. I had to do like a exclamation point, like what? That is truly how it is. But keep going, keep going.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, right, that this is, we grow up in a certain way and then it comes with us into adulthood. And for me, that was the case. Like all of this worry, this self-doubt, it followed me through to university and I started having panic attacks. And I remember the first one I had, I was at a crowded party and my palms started to get sweaty and my heart started to beat fast and my vision tunneled and I felt this overwhelming sense of dread take over. So I locked myself in the bathroom and I remember just sliding down the wall and just waiting for it to pass. And it was terrifying. And ever since then, I started living in fear. Like, when is the next panic attack going to strike? So it was so overwhelming for me. And I was on edge all the time. And I went to my doctor and I said, I'm having a lot of anxiety. Like, what can we do here? And she pulled out a prescription pad and started writing out a prescription for anti-anxiety meds. And I said, well, let's just pause for a moment. Let me just see, because I really haven't explored any other options to deal with this yet. And I said, let me figure out if, there's something that I can do naturally to help. And so this is where I started going down this rabbit hole. I started doing my own research of, are there things in my diet maybe that I could change? And so I went mostly whole foods, plant-based, and I started to feel a bit calmer. But I still felt like my nervous system was pretty amped up. So I started practicing yoga, and then I felt calmer still. And then I still had a million different thoughts in my brain. And this is where I came to the practice of meditation. And for me, that was like the last piece of the puzzle that clicked in. I feel like I figured out this system that when we incorporate pieces from these three areas, from nutrition and movement and mindset, that can help us not only manage anxiety, but get to a place where we're really healing. We're consistently healing and evolving and growing. And, to have these practices in our life every day, it's made such a profound impact. And so this is what I share with others now, is helping people put into place a system that works for them with their self-care practices so that they can regulate and feel calm and balanced. And so I think that's what we'll chat about today.
That sounds good. Let me ask you this. I think anxiety manifests in they categorize it, right, in various different areas. The moment that you said crowded room, palms were getting sweaty, I was imagining my husband. I was literally conjuring up my husband because he has social anxiety. Like Black Friday, when we go out and do so, he's like, I'm not going. I'm not doing all that. Early in the marriage, I was doing it for you. I'm telling you now, we've crossed the bridge. I ain't going. He does not like large parties. Like COVID was a gift from God to him because he was like, I'm fine with being around you guys all day. So when you went to your healthcare provider, or usually it's a psychiatrist, right?
It was a doctor, like my GP, my general physician.
Did they categorize you as anxiety disorder?
So they didn't really make an attempt at that time to put a label on it, which I think is also interesting because it really kind of speaks to the medical system. And at least like I'm based in Canada, and where we're at is that doctors are very busy. There wasn't really a deep dive into, okay, how frequently are you feeling this way? What do you think some of the triggers are? Like, what's going on? There wasn't really a conversation there. It was more just, okay, you're having this symptom of anxiety. Here's how I know how to stop the symptom is to take a pill. And there's I have no hate around people who take medication or anything. So many of my clients come to me on it, and that's totally fine. But for me, I just wanted to explore, are there any other options? And I think for some people, medication can help them get to sort of a baseline where they're maybe then more receptive, more able to do some of the work with habits. But for me, I just didn't want to go that route. I wanted to see, what can I do to really address the root of what's going on instead of just sort of putting a Band-Aid on symptoms. I wanted to really understand, like, why am I having this anxiety? What's the fear here? And then have more tools in my toolbox to help with it.
Okay. And that's exactly why I asked. But I appreciate you saying that, because everybody, they just go through what you were just talking about. And so it's kind of this ambiguous area that I'm in. And I feel like the doctor doesn't know what to do. And now I'm here. So kudos to you for taking charge of your health. Okay. For me, and I'm going to ask you on this because I'm really intrigued with your methods. So for me, I had the same thing. I was like, I don't want to be on no pills, because the thing is, I feel like I will get to a point where my anxiety keeps growing and growing, which means they have to up the dosage. Okay. And then, God forbid, I miss taking it one day and my body collapses because I don't have the regulator. Right. But unfortunately, I was in a high stress environment, or I was in the IT industry. I still kind of am a little bit, but it's very high stress. It's very male dominated. You're fighting amongst sharks, trying to not become one to be successful. You understand what I'm saying? And so I had this huge stressful environment. I'm doing like CrossFit. I'm lifting heavy weights, and I'm really exhausting my body, and it was doing good for a little bit, and then it stopped working. So I'm like, man, this ain't working. And that's when I went and got the medicine. I did the same thing. I was like, let me take a minute and actually go to therapy and talk to someone to talk about this, because I have too many things going on in my mind right now. I'm embarrassed to even mention it to like my husband or to anybody, but if I can mention this to this complete stranger who can help me figure out and put these pieces together, then I can be at peace with my past, not hold any resentment or bitterness. And when I was able to do that, I was off medication. Because psychiatrists want you to be on that medicine. I would think, because that's where they're making their money. She was like, well, it sounds like we can just take you off. And I've been off medication just from dealing with these things from a talking perspective. That was mine. But why don't you go ahead and tell me about some of your techniques? I think specifically maybe meditation. Because I tried that early and then it didn't quite stick. So tell me a little bit about some of that.
Oh yeah, we can talk about it. And let me say that the approach I like to take is holistic, right? So I don't think there's any one silver bullet when it comes to anxiety. I think it really is like these pieces of the puzzle. And just like if you were missing a piece of the puzzle wouldn't be complete, right? So it's about our habits and, what are we doing every day to support our mental health? And so one of these habits that we can put into place that's going to have such a big impact on our mental health is meditation. And I think for a lot of people, meditation feels like a bit of a nebulous area, right? A bit of a black box of like, what does this mean? Am I doing this right? And there's this misconception that meditation means we have to sit on a cushion in absolute silence and just try to push our thoughts away over and over. When I first tried meditation, that was what I thought I was doing. And so I would sit there as a chronic overthinker and I would say, okay, don't think now, don't think, like stop thinking, you're letting thoughts come through. And I would get so frustrated at myself. And then the perfectionism would come in and I would think, no, you're doing this wrong. Oh, you can't do this. And then I would want to quit because I didn't feel quote unquote good at it. So I want to just lay that all out there for people to say that the experience meditating is not always one of like being on a mountaintop feeling so free. I mean, meditation is really about getting curious about our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, instead of judging them. And, for myself being a perfectionist, I was so used to judgment and self-criticism as my main motivational tool that the practice of sort of like stepping back for a moment and seeing what was coming up without judging, it felt radically different to me. So meditation can be, you sitting in a chair, you lying down in bed before you fully get up for a few moments. I mean, I've been doing it for over 10 years now, and I still always do a guided meditation because I think having someone's voice guiding you through whatever type of meditation you're doing, whether it's, you're visualizing something, whether you're focusing on your breath, something in the present moment, it's helpful to have a guide there because that's what helps us come back to the present moment, right? Come back over and over when our mind wanders. And that's really what meditation is. We're training our brain to come back to the present over and over so that anytime it wanders, we come back over and over. And just like going to the gym and grabbing a set of weights and doing a set of bicep curls, you're not going to see an effect if you do one set of bicep curls. But you go to that gym over and over and you continue to lift weights and you up the weight, you're absolutely going to see an effect. And it's, I think, the same with meditation.
Oh man, I've never heard meditation described in that way before. Curious? Are you kidding me? That is so appealing. I think that is what would make me appealing to that because I think I was the same way. I was thinking while I was meditating and like, am I supposed to be doing this or is this what's supposed to be happening? And you're going in there with an expectation, but like you said, give it time. It's a process. And I like that. I like that.
It's a process, right? And the curiosity, like we're getting curious about, what is coming up for me right now? What kind of emotions am I feeling? And getting curious about them from a little bit of an observer perspective. Like we're trying to get a bit of separation from them so that when in those really tough moments, right, where let's say you're fighting with a friend and you're overthinking it, someone doesn't text you back, those are the moments that we can bring in meditation into that to say, oh, okay, I'm having a thought right now that, this is stressful, or I'm having this feeling of anxiety right now. Okay, like where do I feel that in the body? Instead of, oh my gosh, I'm anxious right now and it's never going to end and it is always going to feel this way and it feels so crummy to feel this way. And like, it's a very different energy behind it, right? That curiosity and finding some of that separation, that's really what we're trying to teach ourselves to do. So in the tough moments, we can bring that in.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's keep it moving. What are the other two pillars that you have?
Yeah, so we talked a bit about mindset, right? Which is meditation falls under that. I think let's talk about nutrition. It's about the foods that you eat because not a lot of people make that link between their diet. I mean, in some respects, we all know that like certain foods are healthier than others and maybe we don't feel so great when we eat a bunch of fried foods or like high sugar foods. But I think there's some more subtleties here of like certain foods that we can consume have the power to affect our mood. Like they're going to affect our neurotransmitters in our brain. They're going to affect the levels of inflammation in our body and they're going to affect our gut bacteria. Like all of these things matter for our mental health. So we want to be incorporating, as many real whole foods as possible. And some of the best powerhouses of foods when it comes to anxiety are things like nuts and seeds. They're rich in magnesium, which is our calming mineral, great for promoting sleep, great for promoting GABA in our brain, which is like your relaxing neurotransmitter. They're also high in zinc, which is good for mood, good for immunity as well.
Yes.
And they have a healthy amount of fat, which is stabilizing for the blood sugar. And sometimes when our blood sugar, I mean, we probably all have been there, right? We haven't eaten in a couple hours, we get hangry and we start to maybe even feel anxious, like blood sugar, all up and down is going to affect our mood. So nuts and seeds are great for that. And pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, flax, chia, walnuts, hemp seeds. These are all incredible for mood. So, and so easy to work in for people, right? Like grabbing a handful between meetings or popping some of them into your smoothie in the morning, sprinkling on oatmeal or cereal. Like we can start to incorporate them in just small doses, just like a couple tablespoons a day can get you your needs in terms of some of those nutrients.
Okay. Now let's do this. For some of those who are allergic to nuts, what other alternatives will provide that same nutrition?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if someone's allergic to nuts, lean into the seed category because they're going to provide a lot of the same nutrients. So hemp, chia, flax, pumpkin, and sunflower, those are going to be incredible. And most people can tolerate them pretty well. And those are going to get you your nutrients. And then, there's lots of other foods too to focus on that help anxiety. So we have anything like deep or rich colored is going to be a great source of antioxidants. So think like red cabbage or Swiss chard, kale, or any type of red or yellow pepper. Like that's going to have a high dose of antioxidants. And so it's going to protect the brain from damage and it's going to help with inflammation. And a side effect of inflammation is feeling anxious. So we can focus on some of these foods. Let me mention another category are fermented foods. So fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, tempeh, miso, so many out there. And these are going to provide live bacteria for the body. And that live bacteria is going to support the gut. And your gut bacteria do so many things. They're incredible. They balance your blood sugar, so that helps with anxiety. They make a lot of your immune system. And they make a lot of your mood-boosting neurotransmitters. So a lot of your serotonin, your brain's sort of like happy, calm juice, that's made in your gut. And it helps make GABA as well, that relaxing neurotransmitter. So big links between gut health and mental health. And it goes both ways, which I think is so cool. So we see a lot of people with anxiety also have gut issues, bloating, heartburn, IBS. There's a big link between them. But what's cool about it is that if you focus on one, you help the other. So if we improve gut health, anxiety symptoms actually improve. If we focus on improving anxiety, let's say we focus on stress relief or like therapy, then gut health improves as well. They sort of talk to each other. There's this two-way street between them.
I've heard that so much. That is so true. When I was having anxiety, when I was in my early 20s, same thing. The doctor was prescribing, it was like a general practitioner, but they were just all over, let's fix your stomach, and doing all this other stuff. And they weren't explaining that they were relating. It's important that this message that you just said here gets out because we don't know when a doctor is telling us to fix our gut that it is, like you said, a byproduct of anxiety. So it's helping one over the other. So I appreciate that message. That is so good. And then geez, kombucha, my husband loves it. I'm struggling.
It has a taste, eh?
Yes, it does.
It's a little vinegary, yeah. I will say there are lots of different brands to explore, luckily, to, just have different flavor profiles. I never want people to feel like they're suffering when it comes to food. Like if you don't like kombucha, that's fine. No worries. There's so many other fermented foods out there that you could get instead. And different fermented foods are going to give you slightly different bacteria strains. So you do want to vary what you're having anyways, right? So maybe for somebody, they're going to have kombucha one day, but then, okay, it's kefir the next day, or it's miso and you're going to have that in a miso soup. You're going to make a stir fry with it or a salad dressing. Like lots of different ways that we can rotate through and incorporate different foods.
Absolutely. I love kimchi myself, so I'm
That's
I'm
a nice
in for
spicy one.
it. It is. I didn't think I was because I saw people making it and I'm like, woo, I don't know, but it tastes really good. My daughter loves it. She's really picky. So if you're a starter, I think miso and those are really good to me, calm ones, that kind of go across the bridge.
Yeah. Well, and let me mention with kimchi as well. With kimchi and sauerkraut, they're kind of double duty because not only are you getting live bacteria, yay, good for gut health, good for mental health, but they're also made of cabbage. And cabbage is rich in something called glutamine. Glutamine is like food for the cells in your small intestine. So in order for them to be healthy and plump and have a solid barrier there, we need to make sure that they're fed and the cells can turn over. So glutamine is feeding that. So that's why those types of fermented foods are like double duty, great for the gut and mental health.
Dang, it's so interesting. These are some players that are just hitting all parts of the body. And so I love the natural aspect of this. It's so many benefits on so many different levels. So yes, tell me about this third one here.
All right. So the third piece of the puzzle is movement. And that means it's about how you move your body. And we want to be moving our body in a way that's going to help regulate the nervous system and balance our hormones. Because when you're feeling anxious and stressed out, your hormones are all out of whack, right? And so our cortisol starts to rise, which is fine short term if we're dealing with a stressful event. But what I find for most people these days is there's always a state of stress, right? We always are saying like, I just have to get through this period and then things will calm down. But guess what? Things never calm down. We're always just taking on more and more, and we're overscheduled, right? In our modern world, just how it functions, like the things that stress us out are like sending an email, right? And we're always sending and receiving emails. So meaning like we're always jacked up and in this state of hyper arousal and stress. And so we want to be focusing then on activities that help balance out our hormones so that cortisol hormone can come down back to its regular pattern. So these are the lower intensity types of movement, like walking, one of the best we have, and so easy and free to do. Yoga, Pilates, bar class. These are incredible in terms of regulating the nervous system, and I think help you find a greater connection with your body, right? Because they're really focusing, most of these are focusing on breath connection as well. So we have that sort of meditative aspect in them, which is going to help regulate the nervous system.
You are so right. I mean, I'm just thinking, as an athlete, and even with my kids coming up, that's all that they talk to you about is breathing. How to breathe through the struggle, breathe through the worst part of this, breathe through, when you're running long distances or whatever. How do you get through the suck? Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that is such a phenomenal message. Now, when you say movement, is there a time where you can overdo it?
Oh, yeah. This is such a good question because, my background is coming from that perfectionist mindset, right? And so I was certainly someone who overdid it. I felt like I had to be active, well, every second of every day, really, but like all the time. And I thought that physical activity meant that you needed to be sore after, that you needed to have some aspect of like, I want to say punishment almost. I had this association with exercise that exercise was for burning calories and you should feel sore after and you should kind of hate it a little bit, but you should feel proud that you did it. And that involved like a total retraining then of seeing exercise as something that was more restorative for my body, that felt good and that, offered just something different, like something more
joy.
Yeah, joy. Yeah. Thank you for that word. Yeah, joy. Yeah. Because it really was like a retraining of this relationship with food as well, but with exercise too. And the type of people that I work with, the recovering perfectionists, there is that tendency to use exercise to the point of exhaustion, right? And if we're already struggling with our hormones and our stress levels, we don't want to be pushing that any further with exercise. We want something that's going to be very supportive for the body and the mind. And I think that, this lower intensity type of movement fits the bill a bit more, but it does involve some mindset work then to get behind, maybe not totally switching your type of movement that you're doing, but seeing that movement could provide something different other than just the typical like pain that a lot of people feel like it should come with.
Agree. It's a turnoff. Oh my goodness. The moment that you pick up working out, it's like go hard, and then you go hard and you wake up the next day and you can't even sit on the toilet. It's it's incredibly like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
You're right. Such a, like, for example, well, you're in Canada, so it's cold, but you have some beautiful scenery. Mm-hmm. I live in Texas and we have parks. So I'll go to a park and just walking, like maybe making 3 laps around that park. And it's a beautiful scene. I have music I have playing on or whatever podcast I'm listening to, whatever. I come off and I'm sweating, but I feel great. I feel great. Like there are so many things that I was thinking of and I was processing and using that time to come up with other ideas. It's so much more involved in working out if you just let it be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And it does kind of free up the mind for some of that creative thinking, like you said, right? It sort of switches our nervous system over to this more relaxing, this sort of like rest and digest side. And that's where all of the beautiful things happen. That's where creativity happens, connection happens, like love, belonging, like all of these, the warm and fuzzies. That's what we're trying to get our nervous system to hang out in more. So if we're constantly stressing it out and pushing that other pathway, like we're going to have trouble then being creative. We're going to have trouble connecting with people and showing up, because it's going to feel like there is nothing left for anybody and for ourselves.
Oh, man. That's so good. Now, I think I have one more question. So you mentioned this, I think, earlier, but I want you to double down on it, because I think it's such a strong message. Why alienating anxiety is the wrong goal. I had another guest who said this as well, that stress, it's not something that we try to take away. It's how we manage it, and we pay attention to it because it's natural to allow you to process what is going on around you. So tell me your take on why not to alienate anxiety.
Well, I'm so glad we're having this conversation and that you're having it with other people as well, because I think it's one that needs to be had, because a lot of people will have the goal of eradicating anxiety. They'll say this sucks. It's uncomfortable. I never want to feel this again. And hey, I get it, because I suffered with anxiety and its symptoms for so many years. And it's so uncomfortable to feel this way. It kind of gets to a point where we stop doing activities because they could maybe lead to anxiety, right? Like, I'm not going to apply for that promotion, that new job. I'm not going to move cities. I'm not going to leave my partner because, oh my God, that could lead to anxiety. And then the result is that we end up living this kind of small life. But I think with anxiety, the goal is not to experience it 0 times. The goal is to be able to have a feeling of anxiety come up, recognize that it's there to alert you to some sort of danger, that something feels uncomfortable and scary about what you're doing. And then the goal is to come back into regulation quicker. So we're not just trying to stay in this regulated state, because it's not realistic. This is our world. Things are going to stress us out, right? It happens. But if we're always worried about being taken out of regulation, that's when we end up living this small life without taking any risks. But if we instead learn, okay, you know what? I can have a feeling of anxiety. I can come out of regulation, but I have these tools that I can bring myself back. So the goal, I think, is to come back quicker into that more balanced state, right? To be able to either talk ourselves back or move our body in a way that brings us back, right? These are some of the practices we've been talking about today. It's giving us more tools in our toolbox so that when we inevitably do slip out of that center sort of balance, that homeostasis, we can come back. We have the confidence in ourselves that we can handle it. I think that's the key.
Ooh, so awesome. So awesome. The risk taker Heather is on this call today. So tell me, do you have any golden nuggets in there that catch up, just to recap what we talked about today?
Yeah, I think, we've talked about these holistic pieces of the puzzle. And what I really want to hit home for people is that it's consistency that is queen here. All right. It's that we do something every day and build up the habit. That's what matters when it comes to our mental health. So sometimes people will set a goal, say, okay, love it, gonna meditate for 20 minutes every day. And then guess what? One day you don't have time for 20 minutes to meditate. And so you fall off of it and then never get back to it, right? And this is why a lot of us can't maintain these habits. So I say that what you do every day matters more than what you do on some of the days. So if that means changing your goal so that your goal is 2 minutes of meditation every day, eating one calming food that we talked about, and maybe getting in a couple minutes of this nervous system regulating movement, if you set those goals and can hit them, you're absolutely going to see results. And then maybe in the future, you go up in time, maybe you start to lengthen your meditations, you try different techniques, you incorporate different foods. That's fine, great. But start with the consistency. What can you do every day so that it becomes just a fabric of your day, right? The self-care pieces are in place every day so that no matter what, that's what you prioritize. Because when you start to do that, it sends this signal to your subconscious mind that says, I'm good enough. I'm deserving of these habits. I'm deserving of this time for myself. And when you send those signals, you can really start to repattern then and change the beliefs that you have about yourself so that you are good enough. You are deserving of this time for yourself. You're worthy of a whole, complete, and big life.
Oh, well, not much else to add to that. I mean, you what are you trying to take away the show? I'm joking.
The highest of compliments.
Well, that's the episode today. Can any of you relate to that overwhelming feeling of concern, worry, or doubt? Have you put in so much effort to avoid or control these thoughts and feelings to the point where you've exhausted yourself only to find out you are still in the same place? Sound familiar? If so, good. That's the first step. It's important to know that we aren't alone, even though we may create this state of isolation. That's why I appreciate Heather sharing her personal story with anxiety, as well as her 3 steps to conquer overthinking and manage anxiety naturally. Even if you have found your way to balance the scales of your day-to-day ups and downs, I want to hear your practices and how you've implemented them to ensure your mental stability. I love it all, and so will someone else. Before I let you go, Heather, why don't you go ahead and remind the people who you are, where they can find your resources, or reach out to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again, Krystal, for having me on. Such a great conversation. And again, for those listening, my name is Heather Lillico, and you can come hang out with me in my community, Cultivating Calm. So if you're someone who is tired of trying so hard, yet never feeling good enough, you're tired of procrastinating and worrying about the what ifs all the time, or if you feel like you can't relax without feeling guilty, then you can download the Cultivating Calm app. Cultivating Calm teaches you how to get to the root of anxiety and put habits into place so that you can become more calm, confident, and free. On the app, there's meditations, recipes, yoga classes, and targeted courses that have you spending just a couple minutes each day to see results, because most of us don't have hours to spend on self-care every day. You can head to the App Store or Google Play and search for Cultivating Calm, and there's a free 14-day trial waiting for you there.
Thank you so much. I'll make sure to include all of Heather's resources and connections in the episode description, as well as on my website's resources page, movingwithmeaning.com. Make sure you guys subscribe to the show, Moving With Meaning, the podcast, and tap that alert bell so you know when these episodes drop. I am on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube Music. Please share, like, repost, and follow. Tag someone. We are creating a community here. Quick housekeeping before you go. Follow me on Instagram at movingwithmeaning82. Also connect with me on LinkedIn. I do dabble in TikTok at Krystal B. Clark. My YouTube channel is up. Kindly run over there and have a look or two. Links are in the episode. Alrighty, I'm Krystal on Moving with Meaning, the podcast, reminding you to take it one step at a time. All moves have meaning. Check y'all later.